Hi friends, how are you? Hope everyone is fine. Today let's learn a funny story. The name of the story is A Strange Wrestling Match. Do you like wrestling? Okay, through a brave and open mind one can win over anything, even ghosts. Still one should avoid boasting. This is what the story reveals. It revolves around a man who was caught up in trouble and had to face a ghost because of his boasting. Though in the end he wins over the game. Anyway, let's get into the story. A strange wrestling match. There was once a wrestler called Vijay Singh, a tall man with massive shoulders and muscular arms. He towered over others like a giant. Vijay Singh, people said, was a born wrestler and could beat all other wrestlers in the world. Wrestler means a person who fights with others as a part of game or sport. Once there was a wrestler named Vijay Singh. He was a tall man with big shoulders and strong muscular arms. In comparison to others, he looked like a giant. People were of the opinion that he was a born wrestler and was unbeatable. This Falcon had one shortcoming which often landed him in awkward situations. He was fond of boasting. Boasting means to speak too proudly about one's belongings and accomplishments. Awkward means what? To cause worry or problem. One day he was sitting in the marketplace surrounded by several young men. After drinking many glasses of milk, he suddenly proclaimed. Proclaimed means to announce something publicly. Why are people afraid of ghosts? I'm not. I wish I met a stout ghost. Stout means fat and solid. I'll teach him a lesson. This Falcon had one flaw that landed him into troubles. It was his habit of speaking too proudly of his possessions. One day while sitting in the market with many young men and after having milk, he announced that he was not afraid of ghosts. Rather, he wanted to meet a ghost and teach him a lesson. Do you want to meet a ghost? Do you want to teach him a lesson? Are you afraid of ghosts, children? Anyway, there were murmurs of applause as well as apprehension. Murmurs means whispers, to speak in a low voice. Apprehension means suspicion or fear about some future happening. Anyway, apprehension among the young men. If you walk alone at night through the haunted desert, one of them said, you are sure to meet ghosts. They roam there freely. That means roam means wander. Strange shrieks and moans. Shriek and moans are high-pitched piercing sounds can be heard all over the place. Travelers have been looted and killed. Looted, that means looting, stealing. Would you really want to go there? Vijay Singh's mighty heart missed a beat or two. Why did he have to boast? Yes, I have heard of the haunted desert, he said nonchalantly. Nonchalantly means to behave in a calm manner that shows disinterest. I think it's just a fairy tale. Haunted means a place visited by ghosts. Okay, people started whispering, some were praising and some were showing suspicion and fears. One young man told him that at night, if he could walk alone through the haunted desert, there he would surely meet ghosts. Ghosts roamed there freely. Strange sounds were often heard there. Travelers were looted and killed. Vijay Singh was little scared and also repented for speaking that. Yet he said very casually that he knew about the place and in his opinion it was nothing but a fairy tale. Oh no, said one of his admirers. It's true. This place is 10 miles to the west on the road to Jaisalmer. The landmark is an ugly black rock that looks like the head of a camel. Landmark means place or building that can be easily recognized. Beyond that, there is nothing but sand and wilderness. Wilderness means an area which is not inhabited by human beings. And, of course, ghosts. One of his admirers exclaimed that was true and told him the location of the place. It was 10 miles to the west on the road to Jaisalmer. The easily recognizable sign was an ugly-looking black rock like the head of a camel. Beyond that, there was nothing except the jungle and ghosts. Almost the entire village turned up that evening to bid farewell to Vijay Singh, who was ready to set out west. Just then, an old woman came forward and thrust a small packet into his hands, and Vijay Singh started walking into the red sunset of the desert. Thrust means to push forcefully. As he walked, the night deepened, the moon was bright, and the stars shone clearly in the Rajasthan sky. Still a few miles short of his destination, Vijay Singh remembered the old woman's packet. He opened it and found nothing but a lump of salt and an egg. The old woman was well known for her eccentricities. Eccentricities means strange behaviors. Vijay Singh set out for his journey to the haunted place, and the whole village came to bid him farewell, means to say goodbye to him. An old lady threw a packet in his hands and he started walking towards the desert. As he kept walking, the night grew dark, the moon became bright, and the stars were clearly visible in the Rajasthan sky. After few miles, Vijay Singh recalled the packet given by that old lady. He opened it and found a lump of salt and an egg. This old woman was famous for her strange behaviors. Let's move on to the next paragraph. As Vijay Singh stepped into the haunted desert, he heard a voice, Vijay Singh, Vijay Singh, you will get lost in the desert. Come this way. I am your friend Natvar. At once Vijay Singh realized it was not his friend but a ghost. Trying to sound brave, he called back, where are you, my dear Natvar? It's dark and I cannot see you. Come here and show me the way. Like all good wrestlers, Vijay Singh wanted to size up his enemy. Size up means to guess. As soon as Vijay Singh stepped into the haunted desert, a voice called him and asked him to follow it. This voice told him that he was his friend Natvar. Vijay Singh came to know that it was a ghost. Showing that he was not scared, rather brave, Vijay Singh called back and asked the ghost his whereabouts, as he was not able to see him due to the darkness. Seeing the ghost just like a good wrestler, Vijay wanted to guess his enemy's power. Soon the ghost appeared at his side. Vijay Singh peered into his face and declared. Peer into means to look at carefully, to search something. You are just a plain lying ghost. Anyway, now I don't have to walk all night. I was longing to meet you. Not used to insults, the ghost was taken aback. People generally started back in horror when they met him. They often fainted, but here was this unfeeling creature claiming he wanted to meet a ghost. It didn't make sense. Really? I don't know why you long to meet me, the ghost said. Pierre, that proves, said Vijay Singh in a bored voice, that you are a stupid ghost. The least a ghost can do is to read a man's thoughts. However, a worthless ghost like you is better than no ghost. The fact is, I am tired of wrestling with men. I want to fight a ghost. The ghost was speechless. Marshalling his ghostly wits, he made an attempt to look Vijay Singh. Marshalling means reordering. He made an attempt to look Vijay Singh scornfully in the eye. Scornfully means feeling or express contempt. Frankly, he said, you don't appear all that strong to me. Appearances can be deceptive. Deceptive, that means giving an appearance or impression different from the true one. Vijay Singh said, take your own case. You claim to be Nadvar, though actually you are a rascal of a ghost. If you doubt my strength, let me give you a demonstration of it. Anyway, shortly the ghost made himself visible and Vijay Singh looked at his face carefully and said that the ghost was a liar. He had wanted to meet him for quite a long time and would not have to walk any more. Hearing this kind of insulting words, the ghost was surprised. Generally, people were scared of him, and seeing him, they started running and fainted. But this case was completely opposite. He wanted to meet the ghost. In surprise, the ghost asked him if that was true. Vijay Singh called the ghost stupid and unable to read a man's thoughts. He said that he was a useless ghost. Vijay further told him that he was tired of fighting with men. That's why now he wanted to fight with a ghost. The ghost didn't have any reply and tried to scare Vijay. He said that Vijay didn't appear to be strong enough. Vijay Singh told the ghost not to go by his appearance and abuse the ghost. Vijay even offered to the ghost that if he was interested, Vijay could prove his strength. Okay, let's move on to the part 2 of the story. Vijay Singh picked up a piece of rock from the sand. Take this, he offered it to the ghost, and squeeze it hard. Squeeze means firmly press. It is filled with fluid. See if I am wrong. While the ghost tried to squeeze the rock first with one hand, then with both, Vijay Singh stealthily means in a cautious manner, took out the egg from his pocket. Vijay Singh snatched the rock, snatched means quickly seized, from the ghost and placed it between both hands and squeezed. At once the yellow yolk oozed means slowly trickle, from around his fingers, and the crackling of the eggshell created the illusion. Illusion means an instance of a wrong perception of a sensory or misleading expression of the stone being crushed. The ghost was so astonished. Astonished means greatly surprised. He did not notice Vijay Singh bending to clean his hands with sand and disposing of the telltale shell. Vijay Singh then picked up another piece of rock and gave it to the ghost. Without a word, the ghost took it, felt it, and peered at it. Peered means look with difficulty. Vijay Singh put his hand into his pocket to take out the lump of salt. Here Vijay Singh proceeded to test the ghost's strength. To challenge the ghost, he gave a piece of rock to him to squeeze liquid from the rock. The ghost tried but failed. Vijay Singh stealthily looked out for an egg from his pocket and exchanged it with the rock and pretended to break it with force. Yellow yolk oozed out with a crackling sound similar to the sound of stone crackling. He disposed of the remnants very cleverly in dark. He again gave a piece of rock to the ghost. Without any word, the ghost took it. He took the lump of salt from his pocket. This is only a stone, protested the ghost. And anyway, it is too dark to see. Never heard of ghost who cannot see in the dark, remarked Vijay Singh. That stone which you hold in your hand contains salt. Crumple it and see. Again the ghost tried to crush the stone, but in vain. He handed over the stone to Vijay Singh. The ghost was now beginning to doubt his ghostly powers. I can see that you are not going to be a worthy opponent. Opponent means enemy, or who is doing something against someone. What's the use of wrestling with a weakling whom I can floor in a minute? So saying, Vijay Singh casually crumpled the lump of salt and let the stone drop in the darkness. He held out his hand and commanded the ghost to taste the powdered stone. Mesmerized with the Falwan's extraordinary strength, the ghost did as he was told. Mesmerized means captured one's complete attention as if by magic. Alarm shot through him. This man could easily vanquish, defeat thoroughly, vanquish him in a wrestling bout in the dark. But perhaps he could be tricked in other ways, assuming a servile manner. Servile means showing an excessive willingness to serve others. The ghost said, Friend Vijay Singh, it's an honor to meet a man like you. I admit to being defeated, but where will you go tonight? Rest in my house. You can leave tomorrow. Now thoroughly elated. Elated means ecstatically happy. Extremely happy. Vijay Singh replied, I cannot refuse your hospitality, but tomorrow you will go with me as my prisoner. I must display the trophy of my victory to my people. The ghost bowed in agreement, but silently vowed to kill Vijay Singh in the night. He led him to his house in the cave. Okay, Vijay Singh asked the ghost to extract salt out from the stone. When the ghost failed, he shore off the salt from his pockets which he had extracted by his muscular power. Almost half of the battle was won. The ghost invited him to take rest in his place. Vijay Singh happily accepted the invitation and also asked the ghost to come along as his prisoner as a trophy of victory. The ghost accepted the condition, yet vowed to kill Vijay Singh in his sleep. He led him to his house in the cave. Okay, let's move on to the next paragraph. The ghost fed him dry fruits and a lot of milk, and later led him to a luxurious bed to sleep on, complete with pillows and bolsters. Bolsters means like pillows. They are also pillows. But Vijay Singh lay awake listening to the snores of the ghost. In the middle of the night, he slipped off his bed. He placed a bolster in the center of the bed, throwing over it a coverlet to make it look exactly like a sleeping man. Having done this, he crouched watchfully in a dark corner. Sure enough, just before the break of dawn, the ghost approached the bed armed with a stout club. He brought the club down on what he thought was Vijay Singh's head. Not hearing even a groan, he smiled, pleased that he had killed his enemy. However, just to make doubly sure, he struck the bolster 6 times more. That means totally 7 times. Satisfied with his work, he returned to his couch and covering his head, settled down to sleep again. Meanwhile, Vijay Singh crept silently back into bed. After a pause, he groaned as if in disgust, drew back his coverlet and sat up. The ghost fed him with dry fruits, milk, and provided him a comfortable bed to sleep. Vijay Singh didn't trust at the hospitality of the ghost and placed a bolster in the center to make it appear like a sleeping man. He hid himself in a dark corner. The ghost attacked with a stout club and hit hard on the bolster 7 times. When the ghost went back to sleep again, he quietly slipped into his bed. Disturbed by the noise, the ghost peeped from under his bedclothes to see the strong man stretching his arms above his head and yawning. For a moment, the ghost turned rigid with shock. Rigid means not flexible. Friend ghost, there are insects in your cave, said Vijay Singh in a complaining voice. Here I was enjoying the sweetest sleep I have had in years, and there comes this insect to trouble me. I distinctly counted 7 flappings. Flappings means move wings up and down. Of its wings, of course, it has not bitten me, but it's most annoying. The ghost panicked. Panic means sudden, uncontrollable fear or anxiety. Those 7 blows would have reduced any other man to pulp. There is no safety near a formidable wrestler like this. Formidable means powerful. He thought and fled from the cave, leaving behind all his ill-gotten wealth. It took several camels from the village to remove the property Vijay Singh had acquired. He returned much of it to the rightful owners. He went especially to the old woman, thanked her for her invaluable gift and asked for her granddaughter's hand in marriage. Thenceforth, Vijay Singh was more careful about boasting. It is said that no traveller was ever troubled again in the haunted desert. In the morning, when the ghost peeped through his bedclothes, he saw the man was stretching his arms above his bed and yawning. Vijay Singh complained to the ghost that there were insects in his cave, which troubled him 7 times by flapping their wings. The ghost grew panicky and realized the ultimate power of such a formidable wrestler and left his fortune. Vijay Singh returned back to the village with innumerous wealth of the ghost. He thanked the old woman for her invaluable gifts and asked to marry her granddaughter. Thereafter, Vijay Singh becomes more sensible and no traveller was ever troubled in the haunted desert. Dear children, how was the story? Have you enjoyed? Hope you have enjoyed. Then let's discuss the questions and answers. What was Vijay Singh's weakness? Which awkward situation did it push him into? Vijay Singh's weakness was that he was fond of boasting. He boasted that he wished that he met a ghost and taught him a lesson. This pushed him to an awkward situation where he was suggested to go to the haunted desert where he could find ghosts. Question number 2. Was the old woman's gift to Vijay Singh eccentric? Why? The old woman gifted a lump of salt and an egg to Vijay Singh. Yes, the gift was eccentric because Vijay Singh could not understand what the purpose of such a gift was on a desert. Why did Vijay Singh ask the ghost disguised as Natwar to come closer? Vijay Singh asked the ghost disguised as Natwar to come closer so that he could size up his enemy like all other good wrestlers. What made the ghost speechless? Why? Vijay Singh pretended to be brave. He looked at Natwar's face and said that he was a plain lying ghost. This made the ghost speechless because people used to get afraid when they saw him, but here Vijay Singh was brave and confident. Why did Vijay Singh say appearances can be deceptive? Vijay Singh said that appearances can be deceptive because he wanted to insult the ghost. He wanted to show the ghost that he was very confident and strong to make the ghost lose. Then how did Vijay Singh use the egg? How did he use the lump of salt? Vijay Singh handed over a rock to the ghost and asked him to squeeze it. He told the ghost that the rock was full of fluid. The ghost was unable to squeeze the rock. Then Vijay Singh insulted the ghost and carefully took the egg in his hand and took the rock from the ghost. He squeezed the egg. The yellow fluid dripped down and made the ghost think that he actually squeezed the rock. Then Vijay Singh challenged the ghost to crush another rock. This time he said that it was nothing but salt. The ghost could not crush the rock. Then Vijay Singh took the lump of salt from his pocket and the rock from the ghost in his hand. He crumbled the lump of salt and let the rock drop into the darkness. Thus Vijay Singh showed that he was very powerful than the ghost. Why did Vijay Singh conclude that the ghost would not be a worthy opponent to him? Was he fair in his judgment? Vijay Singh concluded that the ghost wouldn't be a worthy opponent to him as he could not perform any of the challenges that Vijay Singh threw on him. Neither could he crush the rock full of fluid, nor he could crumple the rock made of salt. No, he was not fair in his judgment because he used unfair tricks to prove that he was more powerful than the ghost. Why did Vijay Singh ask the ghost to accompany him to town next day? Vijay Singh asked the ghost to accompany him to town next day so that he could boast that he claimed victory even in a fight with a ghost. He wanted the ghost to accompany him as his prisoner. What made the ghost believe Vijay Singh was dead? There was no sound or groan in response to the ghost beating on the bolster which he thought to be Vijay Singh. This made the ghost believe that Vijay Singh was dead. Vijay Singh complained of insects in the cave. What was he referring to and why? Thinking that Vijay Singh was sleeping on the bed, the ghost had beaten him 7 times with his stout club. Vijay Singh complained that some insect flapped him with its wings 7 times. He did so to prove that he was so powerful that those beatings with his stout club were as powerless as an insect's flap. Was it really ghost who Vijay Singh befooled? Who do you think it was? No, it was not really a ghost who Vijay Singh befooled. I think he was a fraudulent human who used to trick people into thinking that he was a ghost. Taking advantage of their fear, he would loot them of their possessions. Maybe. We are not sure. Okay, my darling children. See you in the next class. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.